My mom taught me to sell at a spaza shop. She ran a hair salon. I pretty much learned entrepreneurship from my moms.
Umntu ngumntu ngabantu. That on your own, you can't really do it. You need the support of those around you.
You will have a network of people, a network of communities, and a society that will make sure that you count.
Good evening and a very, very warm welcome from the Saita Straight Talk desk. My name is Louise, and it is always such a pleasure to be in your presence on a Tuesday and on a Thursday evening when we do our panel discussion called Saita Straight Talk. Saita Straight Talk is brought to you by the South African Informal Traders Alliance, the only voice of the informal sector in South Africa. And their aim is to be one sector, one voice. It's the 8th of March, 2022, and I'm going to do this. And this is the striker pose for International Women's Day and the start of a year of their theme that says hashtag break the barrier and break the bias. So individually, we are all responsible for our own thoughts and actions. That we need to take responsibility for every day. But we can break the bias in our communities. We can break the bias in our workplaces. We can break the bias in our schools, in our colleges, in our university. Together, we can break the bias. And it starts on International Women's Day. And this is the theme that will carry us through for the rest of the year. Every session of Saita Straight Talk, I promise you that I invite people of great caliber. And this evening, because it's International Women's Day, it is only fitting that we have the leader of our organization, the president, Madam Rashida Muller. Good evening and a warm, warm welcome.
Thank you, Louise, and good evening to all the listeners, and happy Women's Day to all women across the world.
Rashida Muller, although she's better known as the president of Saita, when you one day sit in her company and she introduces herself, then you must know the one thing that she says before anything else is she calls herself an activist. Now, Mulesa Lumina, really, I'm so honored to be between the two ladies on either side of the age spectrum. Mulesa, you are an activist in your own right. Good evening and very, very welcome. And please just give us a 30-second introduction of the kinds of activism and work that you've been doing.
Thank you so much, Louise. Good evening to you, good evening to the viewers, and thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here tonight and to have this discussion with you. I'm so excited, such an interesting, exciting topic, and I'm happy International Women's Day to everybody, to yourselves as well. So as Louise already mentioned, my name is Mulesa, and I am a content creator, social media strategist, blogger, and I'm also an activist. I've done a wide range of activist work in the different types of capacities. And my own personal capacity, I mainly do that through my blogging endeavors. And through my professional capacity, I've also done some work in research in the human rights field, in business human rights, as well as women's rights. And I've also done some work in the sexual and reproductive health and rights field as well. So thank you very much for having me again, Louise.
Thank you so much for that. Now, Rashida, I'm going to ask you to kick off. I mean, it really feels strange that in the year 2022, and on an International Women's Day, we would have the theme as hashtag break the bias. Have we not moved on yet? Is it really still necessary for women to still be singing the song of equality?
Well, Louise, in my history as a leader in the informal sector, I think I broke the barriers those years already because I did not allow anything to stand in my way. And, I remember very clearly that in the Western Cape Provincial Office, they would say, Rashida Muller's coming. She doesn't knock on the door, she walks through that door. It was all about, taking a stand and believing in your rights and your principles and fight for what you believe is correct, and especially as a woman to be recognized. But unfortunately, the order of the day today, as in 2022, we still have the women being marginalized. We still hear gender-based violence on top of our agenda all the time. And yes, it is today that we want to express our views of solidarity amongst all women across the world to stand united and to defend the rights of women. We should not aspire to be equal to men. We should rise above them because women are special.
I saw such a beautiful post on Facebook yesterday where somebody actually said that we've actually been conditioned into believing that we are the weaker sex, but we are not, because we are the incubators of life. We walk narrowly with what creation is all about. So Mulesa, let me direct the question to you. I mean, Rashida has been walking this road for more than 30 years. So the landscape has changed. What is your experience? And also, let's just weigh up and see whether there really is a difference between what's happening in the corporate sector as we know it and in the informal sector, because we know what Rashida's just said. What's your experience in the corporate world like?
I would say that in as much as we have made some significant strides over the past, I guess, in my entire lifetime, which is for as long as Rashida has been active, as you said, I think there have definitely been some really amazing accomplishments that we've seen, and so many women rising to such incredible heights in the corporate sector. But it hasn't come without its fair share of challenges, and there's still so many challenges that remain. As you've already mentioned, there is that inherent bias that we also have, this belief that we are inherently weaker than men in some capacity, that we can't necessarily rise to the occasion, that we have all of these barriers and challenges that prevent us from becoming women who rise to positions of power. And I think that in as much as I say there has been some positive change, it's still very sad to see that we still have quite a long way to go as far as seeing more women in top tier positions without it having to be something that we have to consistently celebrate every single year. It's still, I think, for me, what's one thing that makes me sad about these celebrations every single year is the fact that we still have to continue with the same rhetoric over and over again, that we have to continue saying we need to dismantle the stereotypes, we need to break down the bias. It has been happening, and I am very hopeful as well that with my generation's generation coming up as well, things will definitely get a bit better. And I have seen that a lot more people are becoming more aware, and I think more women are becoming more self-aware about what is happening around them and are actively trying to do their best to dismantle the biases, dismantle the stereotypes, and rise above what we've been socialized to believe, which is that we are inferior, that we don't necessarily have what it takes to get to the top tier positions.
So my default setting when I think of the word women and bias, it's you almost seem to automatically revert to the men versus women thing. But bias also signifies stereotypes and discrimination. Rashida, as an informal trader and looking at what the current economic situation is in our country, how does that kind of stereotype and discrimination play itself out within the informal sector and the different tiers of people within the informal sector? How does that happen?
Well, you have to understand who is the informal sector, number one. And an informal trader is there not by desire. An informal trader is on that street, on that marketplace through survival. And you'll find that they are the people who are either unskilled, can't find another job, having been retrenched, and that feeling of insecurity and fear for the law enforcement, always being harassed on the streets, and that has has set that tone that we're talking about, why the informal traders are so, the women in informal trade are so affected by these things. But what we've seen over the last few years is the fact that women have risen to be the leadership of those very informal trading markets. And that you'll find across the country, women leaders are rising. But it's going to take a lot of awareness, a lot of, spreading the news, spreading the views of your rights as a woman. You have the right to earn a living. You have a right to stand on that street and defend yourself against law enforcement and so on. So tonight we want to talk to all the women as well as the men. The men need to realize that they cannot take women for granted. Women have equal rights to men, and women have the right to exercise it. But it's for us who are leaders in different sectors to empower that woman on the ground, to give her the confidence, to instill in her, motivate her, to see that the best of her comes out, to uplift her, and to ensure that, this of you're not as good as a man should be totally eliminated.
So, Mulesa, the other aspect that I want to touch on is we've now done the economy, but what about the bias that exists in terms of what I'm allowed to do with my body? I mean, that is such a big thing, and that also spans across just the man versus woman thing. I mean, I think as women also we've been so conditioned to put each other in little boxes that we often don't realize just how harmful we are towards each other. And when you answer me that, I would also like you to consider what are the little checks and balances that we can start making ourselves aware of to make sure that we break those biases.
Well, Louise, I think you touched on something that is very important, that's social conditioning. And I think each one of us has responsibility when we become aware of that conditioning to also ensure that those around us, be the other women in our lives as well as the men in our lives, or also help them also unlearn a lot of those things that we've been taught before that we say that are inherent truths. But fundamentally, these are just belief systems that can change, can develop over time, can evolve. And so I think it is in keeping with the theme of this year, which is break the bias. I think one important aspect of that is taking on that responsibility ourselves and being activists in our own right, in our own dealings with other people, to be able to say, we don't necessarily have to continue in believing the same things that we've believed for the longest time because it's harmful, because we've seen the impacts that it can have. We've seen how toxic masculinity affects men in a very negative way. We've seen how women not supporting each other also affects them in a very negative way as well. So I think it also starts with us in leading by example, really showcasing how we can do better, how we can be better. I think for me, that's one of the biggest ways that we can also just generally to also just check our biases on a regular basis. Are we creating spaces within our social circles? If I'm a leader in the corporate sector, am I creating a workspace in which diverse people of different backgrounds, different races, different genders are able to express themselves freely? Do they feel safe to do so? So I think it really is a responsibility of each and every single one of us to continually check that and to see how we can play a role in dismantling these long-held beliefs that actually do us so much harm more than good.
Rashida, you spoke earlier about how informal traders are there not by design, but by necessity. The world has changed because we've had 2 years of COVID-19, where we know that a lot of skilled workers have lost their jobs, and at this point, it doesn't look like it's close to we getting to a point where those jobs are going to become available immediately, which automatically means that a lot of those people also, out of necessity, has now become informal traders. Everybody's trying to buy a little and sell a little. How do you think that is going to impact exactly what I spoke about earlier in terms of that kind of discrimination where a street trader might be considered to be a little less than the person who's able to sell out of his garage, who is slightly less than the person that is a car mechanic, or is slightly less than the lady that is able to do her hair from her house. How would you say to an informal trader, somebody that has been walking the streets and working the streets for years, how do you mentally deal with that so that you don't believe that you are less than?
Well, if one just look at the fact that women in most households are the breadwinners, the fact that they're the breadwinner, how they earn their living is really irrelevant. But coming home, being able to put that food on the table, being able to give that bus fare to their children to go to school, that shows the responsibility that that woman has taken. And that should make her very proud. One should never look down on anyone, in particular women, single mothers who are out there eking out a survival to ensure that their children get a better education, a better life after them. So I would say to women in the informal sector, let's have that solidarity amongst us. No matter at what level you are, we are sisters. We need to stand together to support each other, to help each other. And in that manner, the issue of how much I earn and where I live is irrelevant. What is relevant is that we are the mothers, we are the breadwinners, we are fighting for our children's, their development and their schooling and their education to ensure. So to women out there, never feel sad, never feel that you are not worthy. You are an important person. And we as women today at this International Day of Women, let's support each other. That's all I can say. Let's support the solidarity of women. We are all equal as sisters, no matter what our conditions are.
Sisa, thank you for your comment on the Facebook page. And Sisa just simply says, "Women are power." That is so lovely to hear. Now, some of the hashtag sentences and slogans that has been suggested for the International Women's Day, in terms of how we take responsibility of what we do to break the bias, says things like, "I will forge positive visibility of women. We will call out gendered actions or assumptions. I will challenge gender stereotypes, discrimination, and bias." Mulesa, those are all wonderfully powerful words to say. But how practical is that in the real world? I mean, if I have been socially conditioned to believe that I'm less than, how do I just do this today and think that I'm doing my bit for breaking the bias?
It's definitely not an easy thing. And it's something that I personally also struggle with on a daily basis. Trying to kind of get my power and really exercise my power is something that I constantly have to kind of like remind myself of and constantly have to, I think, fight for all the time. And so it can be very challenging to do that and to implement those, powerful words in practice. But there are so many ways that we could do that. When it comes to taking on that responsibility to break the bias, you are up against, people who are your friends, who are your family, and to try and challenge their belief systems is not going to be an easy feat. But you just have to keep on pushing and keep on going at it. You have to really be steadfast in who you are and really be strong in your belief system to be able to convince other people of the same. So it definitely starts with you. I think the best thing for me has always been to start with myself and working on myself, working on understanding what my rights are, knowing what my rights are, really being steadfast in that resolve, and finding ways to express myself and to help others see that there are ways that you can do this, that there are ways that you can express yourself and use your voice. And as difficult as it is, and as much as you will find a lot of backlash sometimes, you will come across a lot of people that are not necessarily happy with what you're telling them. You have to remain as strong as possible in your belief system. You have to continue to stand your ground and say, enough is enough. I will not stand for this, and I don't expect any of you to stand for this either.
Yeah. Thank you, Mulesa. And if you are a Facebook or a YouTube viewer, welcome, and thank you for all your comments on the thread. It's so good to hear from you. Kamogelo, happy township economy year, he says. And yes, it is definitely the year for our township economies to show who is the real engine in the South African economy. Rashida, I can't help but think when we're talking about breaking the bias, is this not exactly, Saita as a movement is all about breaking that bias. If we talk about the conversations that we've had on the StraightTalk series over the last couple of months, it's literally been about putting up our hands and saying to government, you cannot make decisions without us, because we are part of this economy. We are a pivotal part of the economy. We've shown ourselves in terms of our gender-based violence programs, how our women are coming up and saying, we are not less than, we deserve the right to be treated with dignity. I want you to talk about Saita, the movement, the alliance, and the role it plays in terms of breaking down those biases, considering that 70% of the informal traders are all women. So how do we do that in the bigger scheme of this alliance?
Well, if we look at Saita, which is the South African Informal Traders Alliance, it is a national movement across all 9 provinces. In each and every province of South Africa, we have a provincial structure with the leadership of Saita in it. Saita came about in 2013. It was launched as the voice of the voiceless, the voice of the informal sector workers. And I think Saita has been very successful and is still climbing the ladder on protecting the rights of informal traders. I'm sure many of you have heard that we have taken the city of Cape Town to court, and we've won that case where a trader was given a fine, which we believe was not a legal fine, because there is a national gazette that says no payment of fees or no renewal of permits. So Saita, for example, took up that case of that little trader out there in the wilderness, and we won that case for that trader. But that sets a precedent of the strong voice that Saita has out in our country. It's national, and we are in the forefront of defending the rights of informal traders. Traders have rights, but many municipalities do not acknowledge their rights and still intimidate, harass. Confiscations and eviction is still the order of the day. So we as Saita are saying, we are the oversight of informal traders. We are their voice, and we will protect them wherever they are. So all informal traders, all small micro businesses do belong to Saita. We are there as an umbrella structure for your protection, to defend your rights against biases, especially against women abuse, etc. Yes, indeed, Saita is the movement.
Thank you, Rashida. Mulesa, in closing, I mean, this is a topic that we could sit around a table and drink coffee and eat biscuits and really just continue talking about just the many facets that is contained in this 4-letter word bias. But could you maybe just sum it up and just give us a little bit of a motivation with regards to it?
So bias, such a simple, short word, but such a powerful word as well. And I think that in order for us to really be able to dismantle the bias, it starts with us, definitely. It speaks to the idea of us working on ourselves and working on what we are biased towards and dismantling those belief systems within ourselves, understanding that we don't have to continue to believe in the things that we've held dear for so long, because like I've said before, they can be harmful towards us, and we need to reconfigure ways in which we can relate to one another in society. It also is so important for us to also celebrate the achievements of women, whether that be by simply just sharing a post on your social media platforms, sharing what an incredible woman in your community is doing, spreading the word about the amazing work that a woman is doing to fight against gender-based violence. Simple, practical steps like that are one way that we can really challenge an entire system that has kept both men and women in positions of difficulty and hardship for the longest time. And also, it's so important for us to continue on a day-to-day basis, engaging with the people and showing them that there is a different way that we can do things. There's a better way that we can do things if we just simply work together and we simply dismantle as much as we can those long-held belief systems, and we do our best to stand in solidarity with one another when our rights are being infringed, when we're being discriminated against, to really understand that we are all each other's support system. We are all allies in this journey that we are on in life.
Thank you so much, Mulesa, for those beautiful closing words. Rashida, as the leader of an organization that represents a number of other organizations on a very high level, please give us some closing thoughts on just eliminating and breaking this bias.
Yes, Louise, I want to say to the sisters in Saita and all over, never forget, you are the thread that weaves through communities. You are the glue that keep families together. We are the beating hearts of our communities, and we play our part in the cycle of life. Why then would we need to prove ourselves? We already carry a heavy burden on our feeble shoulders. Therefore, I call upon our menfolk to recognize our worth and to respect us, to protect us, and lay your hands on us only with love and affection. Saita recognizes your struggles and your challenges. As president, I will always lobby government and local authorities to assist us in assisting you. Our vulnerable sisters are there. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and remember, Saita cares. Happy International Women's Day.
And with those powerful words from Our Lady President Rashida Muller, Mulesa Limina, thank you so much for being on the panel on this very prestigious day, the 8th of March 2022, International Women's Day. This was Saita Straight Talk. Until next time, from me, Louise, goodbye.
Bye.